the 7th chapter, whereby there are 15 Vajra statements. So all these 15 Vajra statements, Sherab Jungne organizes them under the topic of the fruition, the result at the state of Buddhahood. So these are Vajra statements from Jigten Sumgon that pertains to questions arising, questions being debated with regards to the result, the fruition. In some ways, you could say, nothing can be really said about the fruition because words are limited in that words are necessarily the product of a subject-object divide. The very way words and the source of words, then conceptuality are based on the subject-object divide. Now, since at the level of fruition, the illusion of the subject and object divide has been overcome, so then that state of Buddhahood is first and foremost should be understood as beyond duality, beyond mental blah blah blah, mental elaborations, conceptualities, subject, object, all those are fully then understood and experienced as illusory. Right now, before that, we conceptualize, beyond duality, illusory. But actually at the fruition state, it's experienced as such. So before we look at these 15 Vajra statements, we should understand that first, that the underlying point, which is insofar as the actual state of fruition is concerned, is beyond conceptuality and therefore beyond subject and object divide, and therefore beyond the realm of verbal and mental activity. And so again, that quote, from Shantideva, in fact, in the last 2 verses back, right, Shantideva was quoted as having said, let's see, it is said, or a few, that the realm of the ultimate is beyond that the relative. And so the relative, in this context, the relative is the relative realm of subject and object. So this is found in Shantideva's chapter on wisdom, chapter 9. That's a very famous quote, Shantideva says that, and of course not just Shantideva, fundamentally the Buddha already taught it, right? That level of Buddhahood, that level of complete and perfect bodhi, cannot be touched. So then these 15 Vajra statements, then you might, I think we could legitimately say, why even bother, given 15 Vajra statements? So in a way, the 15 Vajra statements are 15 too many statements. Not out of disrespect to Kyobpa Rinpoche, but in a way you could say, these 15 Vajra statements are 15 too many Vajra statements. So you can think of it that way without being disrespectful, as in knowing that at the level of fruition, no statement relying on words, and therefore no statement can truly be it. Right? Now, if we understand that, no statement can adequately, no words can adequately then these words in the Vajra statements, we can then relate to them not in the way that, oh, these Vajra statements somehow, right, is actually showing us the final state of Buddha. If we understand, right, then we can benefit from these Vajra statements, because what these 15 Vajra statements here on the topic of fruition, what they're doing is they're addressing what are clearly mistaken views or imprecise views with regards to the result. Now, even though words really cannot, right, describe the result, but what words are doing is they can kind of influence the way we now look at what the result is. So with regards to that, there are more accurate and skillful, fundamentally more skillful and helpful ways of thinking about the result now, and less useful ways of thinking about the result. You see what I'm saying? Even though, right, the result itself is not touched, so to say, by the realm of words, by the realms of subject-object divide. Nonetheless, while we are on this side of confusion, there are more or less helpful ways of conceptualizing result. Because how we conceptualize the result now have implications on, more importantly, how we travel on the path to the result. Our process is affected by the way we conceptualize the result now. So while it cannot show us, while these words cannot basically show us the fruition itself, they nonetheless can play a role in helping us to eventually realize their fruition. So it is in that spirit, in the underlying spirit, that we now look at the statements in this chapter. And also, the commentary, just to kind of show. It's fairly short, for each of these Vajra statements, relatively speaking. Anyway, so 7.1. Those of you who have the book, you can look at page 87. So statement 1 of chapter 7. At the stage of Buddhahood, at the point of Buddhahood, the two truths are completely indivisible. The two truths are completely indivisible. So this, Rigzin Chodra tells us, Kyobpa Rinpoche made this statement in response to people claiming that there are two truths at the stage of Buddhahood. That for Buddhists, the two truths still exist as two truths. So here, Kyobpa Rinpoche says, at the stage of Buddhahood, there is no distinction between the two truths. No more distinction. I think, maybe for most of us, right? We have read enough about these things. We will say, oh yeah, isn't it obvious? At the level of Buddha, there are no two truths. But there are kind of more subtle points that are being addressed than our usual, Buddhahood, there's no more two truths. you know. But anyway, let's look at how Khenpo Kunpal explains this statement. At the state of Buddhahood, even the subtle habitual tendencies of dualistic elaboration about all the phenomena included within samsara and nirvana are pacified. So the habitual tendencies, the tendencies to make dual, to dualize, the tendency, the habit of dualistic elaboration are pacified, are put to rest, no more, finish, complete, done. So here, we should remember that there are different, the obscurations, right, are explained as chiefly two types of obscurations, chiefly. Then from two, they elaborate into three, and from three to four. But basically, two basic types of obscurations. The afflictive obscurations and the cognitive obscurations. Afflictive obscurations pertain to any and all mistaken, erroneous, perverted views regarding the personal self, the personal sense of self. So it's called the self of persons, this personal sense of self. So afflictive obscurations are referring to all the gross kleshas that is the result of grasping onto this personal self, the result of that, and also the cause of that, as in it then further gives rise to an erroneous confirmation that this person here has a self, has an unchanging core, has selfhood. So that's the afflictive obscurations. Second obscuration is the more subtle obscuration, harder to purify. Now, the first obscuration is said to be finished, done with, when a bodhisattva arrives at the 8th bhumi. Completely done. Right? The first type of obscuration. The obscuration of the gross kleshas, the gross afflictive emotions, the gross mental defilements. The second obscuration is the cognitive obscurations. The cognitive obscurations are the obscurations that arises from this very subtle form of subject-object divide. Often when we talk about duality and subject-object divide, we are thinking of like me, you. Yes, of course, that is a form of duality, or fixating on duality. Me, not me. But the real kind of cognitive obscurations, which is related to this subject-object divide, is actually at a level that is very, very, very subtle, to the point that we don't even, our untrained eyes, our untrained minds cannot see that level of subtle divide. That is ultimately what this cognitive obscuration says. So the take-home lesson really is, right, that that this kind of like very subtle, almost like you say, almost feels like cannot escape, So that, I don't know, for some of us might sound depressing, but for me, it's not depressing. It's just describing, Like the power of confusion, you know. So that when I'm confused in other ways, you know, I actually don't feel so bad, you know, or at least don't feel so depressed, you know, like, oh, you know, because underlying all of that is this very subtle subject-object divide, and that is the beginning or the root of what's called cognitive obscurations. And cognitive obscurations is what prevents us from achieving the quality of all knowingness. Afflictive obscurations prevent us from achieving the result of freedom from samsara. When both of these obscurations are purified, cleansed, cleared away, done with, we are at the level of complete and perfect Buddha. So here, Khenpo Kunpal begins by reminding us and says, the most subtle habitual tendencies of dualistic elaboration within all phenomena, whether you call it samsara or nirvana, they are all fully, completely done, settled, finished, pacified. Like a fire that has extinguished the firewood, all the movements of the mind and mental factors are overcome. The movements of mind and mental factors, mind, basic minds, mental factors, elaboration of this more basic mind. At this stage of Buddhahood, at this stage which is Buddhahood, when all movements of the mind and mental factors are done with, finished, completed, no more in play, at this stage, which is Buddhahood, in the essence of non-dual unity and great equality, the self-arisen limitless wisdom sees the knowable objects entirely. So here Khenpo Kunpal makes this point that at the stage of Buddhahood, it is not, a stage of like a universal blur, universal blur. Everything is no longer perceived, everything is done. Instead, it says limitless wisdom sees the knowable objects entirely. Whatever can be known at this state of Buddha, this Buddha mind knows. Because sometimes when we say things like, all confusion are pacified, all mental defilements are done, all afflictive emotions are gone, the emphasis is finish, 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 pacified, finish, gone. Then we might think, then coupled with Mahamudra language about, resting mind in the nature of mind, then we think, in the state of Buddhahood is just no mental activity, more or less in the state of blurriness. But it's not. Yeah, limitless wisdom sees the knowable objects entirely. Whatever can be an object of cognition is cognized clearly and without mistake. Both the way they appear, meaning the way they play out due to karma, and the way they truly are, which is emptiness. However, continuing from this commentary, however, in terms of dualistic elaboration into the two truths and so forth, they are completely indivisible without exception. It is said in the sutra, although there is one truth, the unborn, some say there are four. This is referring to the Four Noble Truths. When the Buddha dwelt in complete awakening, he saw not even one existing truth. How could it then be four? So this kind of making fun, in some ways. of those who fixate on, there's the Four Noble Truths, there's the Four Noble Truths. So here it says, actually when the Buddha attained a complete awakening, not only there wasn't four truths, not even two truths, and actually not even one truth. Because in a way you could say truth and falsity are matters of this side of confusion. On this side, right, of fruition, truth and falsity are terms that don't apply. They're completely indivisible, without exception. They're indivisible. So quoting another text, a tantra, the relative and the ultimate, these two concepts are completely absent. Where they are truly mixed, that is taught to be the unity of Buddhahood. Where they are truly mixed, that means not separated into one or the other, then that is the state of Buddhahood. So Khenpo Kunpal doesn't go further than that, and in many ways, that is sufficient as a reminder for us beginning practitioners that while on this side of confusion, when we learn the teachings, often the teachings are taught in such a way that you see a pattern of a division into relative and ultimate, right? Such as relative bodhicitta, ultimate bodhicitta, right? Such as generation stage of deity practice, completion stage of deity practice, such as relative truth and ultimate truth, and so on and so forth, right? So then sometimes, we think that at the level of Buddhahood, at the fruition level, these two truths somehow continue. I think this is also related to earlier discussions and questions about, such as like, does karma still operate on the level of Buddhahood? So if we try to answer that question now with the vocabulary used in this statement, we will say that karma is indivisible. It's not saying no, it doesn't operate, but also it's not saying that it operates in the way that you and I normally think how it operates. It's both, but it's not, its entirety is not merely the total of both added together. Its totality is beyond simply the two, or one without the other. Here, maybe just to give you a taste of like what are the issues, right? Chodra, in his commentary, quoting Nagarjuna, for example, he says, Nagarjuna says, Samsara and Nirvana, these do not exist as two. So the ultimate division is into Samsara and Nirvana. It says, but Samsara and Nirvana, these do not exist as two. They don't exist independent of each other. And more to the point for us, knowing the nature of samsara, that itself is nirvana. So nirvana is not going somewhere else. So maybe you want to say there is one truth, nirvana over there. That is that one truth. Then samsara over here, a second truth. Then Buddhas are over there, busy worrying about those of us over here. But here is saying, no, it's not like that. And also those of us who are here, we might think, oh, how do I get to nirvana over there? I'm here. How do I get to nirvana over there? Here it says, to know the nature of here is to be there. So inseparable also in this way. It's like a lot of times, we love, or some of us at least, love expressions like inseparability, unified, And sometimes this just leads to laziness. I've seen often, of course, Facebook is never really a place for meaningful teachings. Facebook postings, where one person posts one thing, next person posts another thing, So it's like, I don't know, maybe you should not spend that much time on Facebook, but if you do, you can see how people, if it is a big name, right, posting a statement about something, right? Oh, everybody, yes, 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 right? More or less same statements somebody else posts, Then they're friends, they're Dharma friends or whatever. Now debate starts, Same statement, People's perception are different. One, fandom. Oh, The other, it's just our kind of dualistic perception. That's dualistic perception there, But anyway, my point is more, this is just the footnote, right? But the point is more, you see, on Facebook, people talking about inseparability, union, unified, beyond this, beyond that, beyond this, beyond that, Then actually, then maybe as a Dharma trickster, right? You just post something really obnoxious in response, Then you see all the duality coming back. Then instantly all the dualities come back, That person will feel so annoyed, Then they have to respond, you don't understand what I'm saying. And then the next person will be like, well, you said it badly. It's not that I don't understand what you said. You said it without skill. And then somebody else will then post a quote from those big names and say, well, they said that. And then somebody else will say, but yeah, you're not that person. La, 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 la. Dualities, diversity, complexity, everything comes back. So here, it's so important for us to remember, right? These teachings are given to us as medicine, principally for ourselves. So we take the medicine as necessary. Not all of us, it's not one medicine that we should all take, okay? Each of us have to find our medicine, perhaps with the help of others, with our help of our guides. We discover the medicine that we need to take, that we take. Then when we become well, here with the Bodhisattva vow, we are also asked, we are also urged, we are also inspired to be a physician ourselves. for the benefit of others, for the sake of others. So here, anyway, Nagarjuna's quote, very nicely, he says, samsara and nirvana, they don't exist as two separate things, two separate realities. To know the nature of samsara, that itself then is what we mean by nirvana. And he quotes Pamudrupa as well. Emaho, how wonderful, this king that is the mind. If one realizes it, then that is nirvana. Now, if one does not realize it, then it is the ocean of samsara. Apart from realizing and non-realizing, there is no obtaining or not obtaining of the fruit. So, why some people, would say, or why some people would say, at the stage of Buddhahood, there are the two truths. It's not, again, completely unfounded. A lot of the views that the Gongchik seems to address, it's not that they don't have a basis, in the text or in the tantras or teachings. They often do. So I like to point out, or rather, I want to share with you that the way to look at the opposing view is to not take the opposing view as like, wow, clearly wrong, but to really see how the opposing view actually has a lot of value. I mean, maybe not all of them, but in many cases, they have a lot of value because they do represent a better way of understanding, relating to things than the way that you and I currently have. But Kyobpa's Vajra statement that seemingly refute, right? We tend to think of it as refuting, but it's not really about refuting. The refuting business is the domain of the logicians and the debaters, which Kyobpa is not interested in. And Kyobpa was not interested in this kind of scholastic debates. He understood, much of those scholastic debates in his own time. And then those scholastic debates, became even more and more detailed and refined, after Kyobpa's time. But even in Kyobpa Rinpoche's time, he was aware, he understood these scholastic debates. So, for example, for those who say, at the level of Buddha, there are the two truths, they say, why? Well, we say at the level of Buddhahood, there are the two bodies, Dharma body and form body. Form body further divided into enjoyment body, Sambhogakaya, and manifested body, Nirmanakaya. So they say, well, there's your two truths. Right? There's your two truths. What do you mean there's no two truths in Buddhahood? Like, such a basic thing, at the level of Buddhahood, Buddhas have the capacity, have achieved both the reality body, Dharmakaya, as well as the form body. Reality body achieved for your own sake, so to say, or primarily relates to your person. Your person is freed now, Dharmakaya. Then the form body manifests for the benefit of others, for the sake of others, for the relative state. So that's the basis of saying, at the level of Buddhahood, there are the two truths. But these kinds of positions then slowly, then they lead to more complications. We're not, scholars. We're not like aspiring scholars even to join that group, right? But for us, again, we can examine and see, what do we think of like these two bodies, the Dharma body and the form body? So sometimes, right, what happens is we think, some of you at least might have come across references to how Shakyamuni is Nirmanakaya, right? Amitabha is Dharmakaya. Amitayus is Sambhogakaya. Vajradhara is Dharmakaya. Buddha Shakyamuni is Rupakaya. Then we think, oh, there is Vajradhara here, or Vairocana over here, then there is Shakyamuni over here. But these two are not two separate realities. If we want to talk in terms of one and not one, right? Basic reality, one and not one, then you can say the relationship is one moon and all the reflections of the moon on all bodies of water. But even that, on the level of fruition, you can't really talk about one or many, or one or none. So now, back to the very beginning point of how we should go through these 15 Vajra statements, never forgetting that the fundamental point that Kyobpa always would want us to remember is, insofar as the fruit, words cannot adequately, concepts cannot adequately really show us the fruit. So everything said in these 15 statements, superficially, you could say, pertains to the question of fruit, but it's still about process, about path. Even though it's overtly is talking about the result. But what we should be looking for when we are in this chapter on the result, on Buddhahood, is how our current understanding of what the fruit is might affect how we approach the path. Make sense? The main concern here is how our more or less skillful understanding of what the result is may affect how we go through this process of awakening path. So here, here in this first statement, then we can contemplate, we can think more, like not like a thinking, but more try to just let it kind of sink in, bit by bit. What is this? At the stage of Buddhahood, there's no distinction into the two truths. The two truths are indivisible. And the next statement actually follows from this first statement. Often, like statements, when they are right next to each other, it's often like the second or third statements that follows is variations of the first one. So the second one is, it says, like when we talk about wisdom, right? When we talk about the wisdom at the level of fruition, then it's non-dual, this wisdom. Again, Khenpo Kunpal, very short commentary, because it really, in a way, this is talking about the fruit. So not much you can say about the fruit, except what it is not. So we will stop today. I have to go move some boxes from Christina's. These are all her Buddhist objects to be further sorted out. Our Sangha member that passed away about a couple of months ago. The final sorting out of everything. And so got to go do that, and then I have to go sort out my stuff for the journey this afternoon. For sure tomorrow we will not be able to meet because I'm just arriving maybe in England at that point. So I don't know yet when we're able to meet. Stay tuned. I will try to put the word out, but maybe you can still, make it a habit, at the same time, and check. And then if nothing is going on, then you can do the practice itself, the Bodhisattva's confession of downfalls. Very short, even when you focus on it and all that, it takes 20 minutes, right? Good thing to do. So let's do the dedication on page 10 of the opening text. Sublime, precious, venerable, and glorious root and lineage gurus, assembly of Yidam deities, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas dwelling in the 10 directions, and all assemblies of Vedas, Viranis, Yoginis, and Dakinis, please heed me. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by me and the entirety of samsara and nirvana and the inherent root of virtue not result in the 8 worldly dharmas, the 4 causes of samsara, and the resultant states of hearers and solitary realizers. And may all mother sentient beings, limitless as the sky, particularly those enemies who hate us, obstruct us, who harm, those who create obstacles, maras who mislead, and their mara retinues have happiness and be separated from suffering, and quickly attain the unsurpassed, perfect, and precious Bodhi. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may we benefit sentient beings with body, speech, and mind. May the afflictive thoughts of attachment, aversion, ignorance, pride, and jealousy not arise in my mind stream. May thoughts of name, fame, gain, respect, and so forth in this life not arise for even a moment with my mind stream moistened by love, compassion, and bodhicitta. May I come under the care of virtuous spiritual friends, and having become as limitless as space, may I achieve the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. By the virtues collected in the 3 times by me and the entirety of samsara and nirvana, and by the innate root of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain the unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious Bodhi. Okay, ta-ta everyone.